Lies of P. It's one of those games that takes a classic story and flips it into something totally unexpected. I mean, a dark, twisted version of Pinocchio? Who saw that coming? From the moment I started playing, I knew this wasn't going to be the fairy tale we all grew up with. Instead, it throws you into this grim, steampunk world where everything feels eerie and dangerous. The atmosphere is on point. There's this constant tension in the air, like you're never quite safe, even when you're just walking through a quiet alley. The game wears its inspirations on its sleeve, and if you've played Bloodborne or Dark Souls, you'll feel right at home here. The combat is that familiar, deliberate style, where every swing of your weapon matters, and timing is everything. But Lies of P adds its own twist, with the weapon customization system. You can mix and match blades and handles to create your own combos, which gives you a ton of freedom to experiment with different builds. It's honestly so satisfying when you find a combination that just clicks with your playstyle. The enemies are no joke. Each one feels like a real threat, and you can't just rush in and expect to button mash your way through. You've got to be patient, learn their patterns, and strike when the moment is right. And the bosses? They're some of the most intense encounters I've had in a while. Every time I thought I was getting the hang of things, a new boss would come along and completely wreck me. But in the best way. It's that feeling of frustration followed by pure joy when you finally take them down. If you're into challenging combat, Lies of P is definitely worth your time. Batman Arkham Knight. If you're into Batman even a little bit, this one really delivers. It's the final entry in the Arkham series, so there's a lot riding on it. And let me tell you, it wraps things up in the most satisfying way. First off, the gameplay. You're not just playing as Batman, you're feeling like Batman. The fluid combat, the way you can string together attacks, counters, gadgets. It's also smooth. Honestly, once you get the hang of it, you feel like a superhero, effortlessly taking down waves of thugs. It's like the perfect balance of tactical and badass. And then there's Gotham City. I mean, this is the Gotham I've always imagined. The atmosphere is spot on. Rain pouring down, neon lights reflecting off the streets, all with that dark, brooding vibe. It's eerie, but alive, if that makes sense. The city feels like it's its own character. Plus, the freedom to glide through the skyline or hop in the Batmobile just makes you feel like you own the place. Speaking of the Batmobile, I know people have mixed feelings about it, but come on, it's the freaking Batmobile. The controls can be a bit clunky at first, but once you get used to it, it's pretty fun blasting through the streets or shifting into battle mode. It adds a new dimension to the game, especially with those tank battles, even though they can get repetitive after a while. The story is where Arkham Knight really shines for me. Without spoiling too much, it's got everything. A psychological thriller, action-packed moments, and that emotional depth you wouldn't expect from a superhero game. Sifu. What's crazy about Sifu is how brutal it can be. I mean, you're this martial artist out for revenge, and the combat system is so fluid, but also super challenging. It's not the kind of game where you can just mash buttons, but the real twist? The aging mechanic. Every time you die, your character ages, and it changes how you play. As you get older, you hit harder, but lose health. It's such a clever way to keep the tension high. You're constantly trying to balance staying alive while still taking risks. There's this internal struggle like, do I push through this fight now, or should I retreat and try again later? The more you age, the fewer chances you have to finish your mission, which makes every death feel meaningful. The level design is awesome too. You're moving through these beautifully crafted environments, from neon-lit nightclubs to serene temples. Each one feels like a love letter to classic kung fu movies. The game's art style is sleek and minimal, but the environments are so detailed, and the atmosphere is on point. You really feel like you're living out this martial arts epic. What I also loved is how Sifu doesn't hold your hand. The difficulty can be punishing, but in a way that makes you want to get better. It's all about learning from your mistakes and coming back stronger. Each time you die, you're learning the enemy's patterns, figuring out new strategies. It's got that Dark Souls vibe where every failure is a lesson. If you love a good challenge and want to experience some of the best hand-to-hand combat in gaming, Sifu is a must-play. Halo Infinite. This game pulls you right into the heart of what makes Halo such a beloved franchise, while also taking bold steps to evolve the series in new and exciting ways. It's all about blending classic Halo action with modern gameplay elements, and it does so in a way that feels fresh, yet familiar. The gameplay is where this title shines brightest. The combat is fluid, responsive, and endlessly satisfying. Whether you're dual-wielding an arsenal of futuristic weapons or taking down enemies with precision strikes, The gunplay is top tier. The grapple shot, a new addition to the series, changes the way you approach every encounter. It's not just a tool, it's a game changer. You can zip across the battlefield, snag weapons from afar, or use it to close the gap for a devastating melee attack. It's one of those mechanics that feels natural right away, but opens up a ton of creative options as you get more comfortable with it. The open world design is a major shift for the series, and it's handled with care. Instead of guiding you down a set path, Halo Infinite gives you the freedom to explore. You'll find enemy outposts, hidden collectibles, and opportunities for some epic vehicle combat scattered across the map. The world feels alive, and every encounter is a chance to experiment with different tactics. Driving a Warthog with a squad of Marines, or taking the skies in a Banshee, feels just as thrilling as ever. One of the standout features is how dynamic the battles feel. Enemies adapt to your strategies. Vehicles explode in glorious fashion. Crash Bandicoot 4. This game is a wild ride that combines classic Crash nostalgia with fresh, modern twists that feel like a love letter to longtime fans and a great entry point for newcomers. It's a bit of a crazy platformer, full of vibrant, chaotic worlds, tricky jumps, and the kind of fun challenge that makes you feel like a gaming hero when you finally nail it. Now, if you've played the old-school Crash games, you know that platforming here isn't a walk in the park, and Crash 4 definitely stays true to that. It's challenging, sometimes rage-inducing, but in the best possible way. There's this huge sense of satisfaction when you master those jumps, dodge obstacles, and make it to the end of a level. It's like the game is constantly daring you to just try it one more time. And hey, if you're someone who loves going for 100% completion, this game has you covered with tons of collectibles, hidden gems, and alternate paths. One of the coolest things about Crash 4 is the introduction of the Quantum Mask. These are special masks you can collect that each give you a unique ability, like slowing down time or flipping gravity. They really shake things up and make you think about platforming in a new way. Each mask adds a layer of strategy and keeps the gameplay fresh. So even if you're 10 or 20 levels in, there's always something new to discover. The masks really give Crash, and Coco, if you prefer to play as her, a fun, super-powered feel without making the game any less challenging. Persona 5 Royal. Imagine a mix of an anime-inspired high school life simulator, a classic RPG, and a supernatural heist adventure. And somehow, this game pulls it all off beautifully. What makes Persona 5 Royal special is its ability to balance two very different worlds. Your everyday life as a high school student and your alter ego as a phantom thief. By day, you're living in Tokyo, going to school, hanging out with friends, working part-time jobs, and even studying. Yes, there are in-game quizzes, but by night, you're diving into these surreal, mind-bending dungeons called palaces to steal the twisted desires of villains and, save the world. Another thing that sets Persona 5 Royal apart is the combat. It's turn-based, but with a twist that makes every encounter feel dynamic. And you get to summon powerful creatures called personas to aid you in battle. It's flashy, fast, and incredibly satisfying when you manage to exploit enemy weaknesses and pull off a team combo. Plus, Royal adds even more personas and abilities to the mix, which just makes the whole thing even more engaging. And if you're wondering what makes Persona 5 Royal different from the original Persona 5, it's like getting an expanded director's cut. You get extra story content, new characters, an additional semester at school, and a brand new palace. These additions don't just feel like bonus content, but more like necessary pieces that deepen the story and characters even further. The Last of Us Part 2. Now, I know this game stirred up a lot of heated discussions when it dropped, but let's be real, some of the hate was totally overblown. First off, people were divided right from the start due to the story direction. Without getting into spoilers, it's safe to say that the game took some big narrative risks. Naughty Dog didn't just play it safe with this one. They were like, nah, we're going all in. And while some fans weren't ready for those changes, that's exactly what makes the game bold. It wasn't afraid to challenge your emotions and expectations, and not every game dares to do that. Also, let's not forget how incredible the gameplay and world building are. Whether or not you agree with the story choices, the game is undeniably polished. The combat is intense, the environments are stunning, and the small details make the world feel lived in. Those aspects of the game were universally praised. And for good reason. The AI is surprisingly smart too. Enemies react to your tactics, work together, and even call out to each other by name. which makes it feel way more personal when you're in the thick of it. It adds this extra layer of immersion that's hard to ignore. Ultimately, The Last of Us 2 was unfairly hated by some, but over time, people have started to recognize its strengths. It's one of those games where, once you let go of the preconceived ideas and just take it for what it is, you realize how well crafted and powerful it is. I think a lot of the initial backlash came from the hype and expectations. People had this picture-perfect idea of what a sequel should be. Dishonored 2. It's like stepping into a living painting where every corner has its own story. One of the things I really appreciated was how they expanded on the original game's mechanics. The new powers are incredibly fun to use. For instance, Emily's ability to manipulate time is a game changer. I found myself replaying levels just to experiment with different ways to use her powers. It's like the game gives you a playground for your creativity. Corvo's powers are just as thrilling as ever, but they've added a nice twist with his new abilities. The flexibility in gameplay is fantastic. Whether you prefer stealth or going in with all guns blazing, the game supports both playstyles seamlessly. It's amazing how each mission can be approached in so many different ways. I spent hours just replaying levels to see how different strategies panned out. The story itself, absolutely gripping. The dual perspectives of Emily and Corvo offer such a fresh take on the narrative. I loved seeing how their choices and actions impacted the world around them. It's impressive how the game manages to weave personal stories with broader political intrigue. Also, the character interactions were top-notch. It felt like the NPCs actually had a life of their own, reacting to your choices and changing their behavior accordingly. It made the world feel more dynamic and alive. I found myself genuinely invested in the characters and their fates. If I had to nitpick, there were a few bugs here and there, but nothing that really detracted from the overall experience. Evil West. If you're into games that let you feel like a total badass while fighting supernatural creatures, this one's for you. It's like Red Dead Redemption meets Van Helsing, but with way more punch. First off, the combat is brutal. You've got this mix of melee and ranged weapons that keeps things interesting the entire time. One moment, you're blasting vampires with a rifle, and the next, you're smashing them into pieces with an electrified gauntlet. The flow of switching between weapons and powers feels so natural. I loved how I never felt stuck using one method. The game just encourages you to get creative with the chaos. The story really surprised me too. I went in expecting just some fun, mindless action, but the narrative actually hooked me. You play as Jesse Rentier, this tough-as-nails cowboy working for a secret monster hunting institute, and the whole Wild West meets horror vibe is so well done. It's not Shakespeare, but it fits the tone perfectly. There's this balance of grit and humor in the dialogue that kept me engaged the whole way through. It doesn't take itself too seriously, but it's not just a throwaway plot either. I also love that they didn't overcomplicate things with RPG elements. There are upgrades, sure, but they don't slow down the action. You can upgrade your weapons and skills as you go, but it's straightforward and doesn't bog you down with too many choices. It's more about fine-tuning how you want to fight, which really lets you focus on the combat and the carnage. Forza Motorsport. This isn't a game that casually asks you to win. It challenges you to learn every curve, every braking point, and every opportunity to overtake with precision. At its core, Forza Motorsport is a celebration of cars, competition, and the sheer joy of pushing limits. This is where car enthusiasts and racing fans unite, exploring an intricate world where every vehicle feels like it has its own story to tell. It's not just a race to the finish line. It's about understanding your car, the track, and the craft. There's a kind of magic in how the game translates the language of motorsport into an experience that feels approachable yet endlessly deep. The driving physics are a standout feature here. Forza Motorsport strikes a perfect balance between realism and accessibility, creating a playground where beginners can learn and veterans can refine their skills. Each car handles differently, and you can feel the difference when you switch from a nimble hatchback to a roaring supercar. Car customization is where the game really lets you unleash your creativity. This isn't just about slapping on a new coat of paint or adding a flashy decal. It's a deeply satisfying process where you can tweak everything from the aerodynamics to the engine setup. Forza Motorsport doesn't treat cars like mere tools. They're your partners on the track, and you have full control over how they evolve. The variety of tracks is another area where this game shines. Sleeping Dogs Definitive Edition. This game is seriously underrated and deserves way more love. Imagine an open-world action game set in the bustling streets of Hong Kong, where you play as an undercover cop tangled up in the city's dangerous criminal underworld. It's like GTA, but with a unique twist that really sets it apart. And let's not forget the driving. Sleeping Dogs has some of the most fun driving mechanics out there. It's super arcadey, and you can do crazy stunts, hijack cars on the go, and even ram other cars off the road. There's something so satisfying about zooming through the city, dodging traffic, and knowing you can hop out at any time to start a fistfight. The city is alive with neon lights, crowded markets, and tons of little side activities that make it feel so authentic. You can go sing karaoke. Yes, karaoke. Try your luck at street races, or just cruise around and soak in the atmosphere. The developers did a fantastic job capturing the vibe of Hong Kong, and it's a city you actually want to explore. One of the best parts of Sleeping Dogs is the hand-to-hand combat. It's like a martial arts movie come to life. You're throwing punches, countering moves, and using your environment in the coolest ways. You can slam enemies into fish tanks, toss them off balconies, and even use random objects around you to gain the upper hand. So, if you're into action games with a great story and a city that feels alive and vibrant, Sleeping Dogs Definitive Edition is absolutely worth checking out. Cuphead. It's a game that doesn't hold your hand. Instead, it hands you a pair of gloves and says, "All right, let's see what you've got." So, what's the deal with Cuphead? Well, it's all about boss battles. Big, bold, over-the-top showdowns that'll push your skills to the limit. Each encounter is completely unique, filled with crazy attacks, patterns you have to learn, and that sweet moment of triumph when you finally get it right. And trust me, those victories feel earned. This game doesn't hand them out like candy. The gameplay is fast, precise, and oh so satisfying. You'll be dodging, jumping, and shooting your way through a series of increasingly difficult fights, all while trying to keep track of what's happening on screen. And there's a lot happening on screen. But that's part of the fun. It's all about staying focused, learning the patterns, and figuring out how to outsmart each boss. One thing that really stands out is the variety. You're not just fighting the same type of boss over and over again. Each one feels like its own mini-event, with unique designs and attacks that keep you on your toes. One minute, you're dodging projectiles in a traditional platforming setup, and the next, you're flying through the air in a shoot-'em-up. It's this constant change of pace that keeps the game so engaging. And let's not forget about the co-op mode. Playing with a friend adds a whole new dynamic to the chaos, as you both work together to take down these larger-than-life foes. It's teamwork at its most frantic and fun. Hellblade 2. The first Hellblade was all about that raw, emotional journey and its deep dive into mental health. So when the sequel came out, a lot of people were expecting the same kind of intimate experience. And while it definitely delivers on atmosphere and emotion, not everyone's on board with some of the changes. One of the big things people are talking about is the shift towards more combat. In the first game, the fighting was kind of secondary to the story. It was there, but it wasn't the main focus. With Hellblade 2, they've definitely ramped up the action, and some fans aren't too happy about that. They wanted more of those quiet, introspective moments that made the first game stand out. But honestly, I think the combat adds a new layer of intensity. Sure, it's more frequent, but it's still tied to Senua's emotional journey, and it makes sense within the context of the story. Another thing that stirred up some controversy is whether the game leans too heavily into its cinematic elements. There's a lot of visual spectacle in Hellblade 2. The graphics are insane, and the world building is next level, but some players feel like it's trying to be more of a movie than a game, which has rubbed a few people the wrong way. I get that, but at the same time, this is what Hellblade is all about, immersing you in this visceral, haunting world. What I love, though, is how Hellblade 2 stays true to its roots. Despite all these changes, it still tackles heavy themes like trauma and mental illness, and it does it with a lot of care and respect. That alone makes it stand out in today's gaming landscape. And even with more combat. Alan Wake 2. If you played the first game, you probably already know how trippy things can get, but this sequel, it cranks up that eerie, psychological horror vibe to a whole new level. It's like being stuck in a thriller novel that keeps messing with your head. And I mean that in the best possible way. So, right off the bat, the atmosphere in this game is incredible. Every location feels drenched in mystery and dread. Whether you're walking through dark forests, creepy small towns, or abandoned buildings, There's this constant tension in the air, like something's always lurking just out of sight. It's not just about jump scares, though. It's that slow, creeping sense of unease that really gets under your skin. The game does such a good job of making you feel like you're never truly safe. The story? Man, it's deep. It's a blend of supernatural horror, psychological thriller, and just straight-up weirdness. You're dealing with Alan's mind unraveling, and reality itself starts to bend and twist around you. There are moments where you're not sure what's real, what's in his head, or what's being written into existence. It's this constant mind game that keeps you hooked. And what I love is how the game doesn't spoon-feed you answers. You're piecing together this puzzle, and it feels so satisfying when things click, or get even weirder. Combat is another high point. The whole flashlight and gun mechanic from the first game is back, but it's more refined this time around. You're constantly managing light and darkness. Of Kena Bridge of Spirits. From the moment I started playing, I was just blown away by how stunning everything looked. It's like stepping into a Pixar movie, but you're in control. The art style is so vibrant and colorful, and the way they bring this magical world to life is just mesmerizing. Every detail feels like it was handcrafted with so much love, from the lush forests to the little creatures, the rot. I mean, those rot are just adorable, right? They're like these little black, fluffy creatures that follow you around, and they're not only cute, they're super helpful too. The gameplay, though, man, that's where it gets really fun. It's got that action-adventure feel, with some Zelda-like puzzle-solving and exploration. The combat is super smooth, and the combination of your staff attacks and the rot helping you out is such a cool mechanic. I loved how you can use the rot to distract enemies or empower your attacks. And the way the game gradually gives you new abilities keeps things fresh. Plus, those boss fights, some of them are tough. Like, way tougher than I expected. They really make you strategize, which is a nice surprise in a game that looks so cozy on the surface. And speaking of cozy, the world is just so nice to explore. The puzzles are really well designed too. Not too hard, but they make you feel smart when you solve them. I remember one where you had to use the rot to move objects around and align things just right, and it was just the perfect balance of challenge and satisfaction. Titanfall 2. If you haven't jumped into this game yet, you're in for a treat because it's one of those rare shooters that nails everything from movement to story. You're not just running and gunning here. Titanfall 2 turns you into a parkour expert with wall running, double jumping, and slides that let you weave through the battlefield like a pro. The controls are smooth, and once you get the hang of it, it's hard to go back to other games. The map designs are built around this movement too, encouraging you to think creatively about how to get from point A to point B. There's something so satisfying about stringing together a perfect series of moves to outmaneuver enemies, and every match feels like you're pulling off action movie stunts. And then there are the Titans. If you ever wanted to pilot a giant mech, Titanfall 2 makes that dream come true. The game balances your time between playing as a pilot, the fast, agile soldier, and then calling down your Titan, which adds this completely new layer to the gameplay. Titans are powerful, heavy-hitting, and give you this awesome sense of being a walking tank. But it's not just a button mash fest. Every Titan has unique abilities and weapons, so there's actually a good bit of strategy involved. One thing that really stands out in Titanfall 2 is the campaign. Now, I know campaigns in first-person shooters can sometimes feel like a warm-up for multiplayer, but here it's a full experience on its own. It's well-paced, exciting, and even throws in some surprises that keep things fresh. Fallout London. Some people were quick to dismiss Fallout London just because it's a fan-made project. There's this unfair assumption that because it's not officially from Bethesda, it can't possibly be as good as a real Fallout game. And to be fair, fan projects can be hit or miss, but Fallout is seriously impressive. The team behind it went above and beyond, creating new factions, storylines, weapons, and even unique creatures inspired by British folklore. They've poured so much creativity into it that it really does feel like a genuine part of the Fallout world. It's set in a post-apocalyptic version of London, obviously, which is so refreshing for a Fallout game. We've spent so much time in the United States, it's just a whole new vibe to step into London and see how a totally different society and culture would handle the end of the world. And that's where Fallout London really shines. It brings this fresh, gritty British flavor to the Fallout universe. One of the coolest things about Fallout London is the factions. In classic Fallout style, you've got groups with their own twisted ideals and goals, but here, they're all inspired by British culture and history. There's this one faction that's essentially a throwback to medieval knights, and another one that feels like a punk rebellion straight out of the streets of London. It's so cool to see a Fallout take on British culture, and the factions feel unique and grounded, adding a whole new layer of immersion. Honestly, that's what makes Fallout London so exciting. It's different in the best ways, and it's exactly what the series needed. Disco Elysium. This isn't your typical video game. There are no epic boss fights, no laser-shooting guns, and no saving the world from a galaxy-ending threat. What you get instead is a deeply personal, weirdly hilarious, and sometimes emotional journey that sticks with you long after the credits roll. The premise is simple. You wake up as a detective with the world's worst hangover and zero memory of who you are or what you're supposed to be doing. Oh, and there's a murder to solve. But trust me, it's so much more than just a crime story. This is a game about choices, messy, chaotic, and completely human choices. And the best part, it never judges you for them. In most games, failing means you reload your last save and try again. Not here. In Disco Elysium, failing is just another part of the story. Maybe you'll bungle an interrogation, or maybe your attempt at a dramatic speech will turn into an awkward disaster. Either way, the game rolls with it, and often, the failures lead to some of the funniest or most touching moments. The way the game handles morality and themes is another standout. It's not about being a good or bad detective. It's about being your detective. You can play as a bumbling fool, a philosophical genius, or even a complete mess of contradictions. And the game never forces you into a box. It's about exploring who you are in this broken world. And trust me, some of the outcomes from your choices are hilarious. If you're up for a journey that's more about the questions than the answers, give this game a shot. Dying Light: The Following. This expansion takes everything you love about Dying Light and cranks it up with a fresh, open-world vibe that feels totally different yet equally intense. It's a brilliant twist on the core game, throwing you into a sprawling countryside where the rules of survival take on a whole new dynamic. Gone are the tight, urban spaces of Heron. And in their place, you get wide-open fields, winding dirt roads, and eerie farmlands where danger feels like it could come from anywhere. The introduction of a customizable buggy is an absolute game changer. This isn't just a vehicle to get you from point A to point B. It's your lifeline in the countryside. Outrunning hordes of infected or plowing through them with your buggy's reinforced frame never gets old. The upgrade system for the buggy is incredibly satisfying, letting you equip things like flamethrowers, UV lights, and other tools of destruction. It adds a whole new layer to gameplay, making your vehicle feel like an extension of your survival toolkit. Exploration in the following feels different from the base game, thanks to the vast, open environment. You're encouraged to venture off the beaten path, and the world rewards your curiosity with hidden secrets, abandoned buildings, and challenges that keep you on edge. It's not just about scavenging for supplies. It's about adapting to this new environment and figuring out how to use its openness to your advantage. The countryside may look serene from a distance, but it's anything but safe. Combat remains as visceral and thrilling as ever. Resident Evil 6, probably one of the most controversial entries in the Resident Evil series. When it came out, a lot of longtime fans were really disappointed, and it got a ton of hate for straying too far from the classic survival horror roots. One of the big criticisms was that it tried to do too much. The game had 4 separate campaigns, each with its own tone and gameplay style. You had Leon's campaign, which felt more like the traditional Resident Evil survival horror, but then you had Chris's and Jake's campaigns, which were full-on action shooters. It left some players feeling like the game had an identity crisis. It wasn't sure if it wanted to be horror or action, and that split the fanbase. But here's the thing. Resident Evil 6 isn't a bad game. It's just different. If you go in expecting a pure horror experience, yeah, you might be disappointed. But if you approach it as a crazy, action-packed adventure with some horror elements sprinkled in, there's a lot of fun to be had. The variety in the campaigns means there's something for everyone. And the co-op play was a big highlight for people who like playing with friends. And let's be honest, some of the hate was probably just because it wasn't what fans expected after the success of Resident Evil 4 and Resident Evil 5. Those games were a hard act to follow. And RE6 took some big risks. Sure, not all of them landed, but it also had some really cool moments, epic boss battles, and impressive visuals for its time. Despite all the complaints, Resident Evil 6 still has some great moments.